So good evening to all. So I think after the tea we are all energized. So as a Vice Chancellor, I always like to give work away to people rather than doing it myself. So here I'm going to hand out, although I've shared it in the group, a small Google form, but many of you may not have seen it. So there are a few questions that I want to ask you, and before that I'll take you through this small inspiration. I think we already heard one paper, Dr. Chaudhary's, which talked about the Greek philosopher. So I think the first thing that I want to leave you with is that for adaptation of anything, I think one of the very important factors is about knowing thyself, and none other than but Socrates, many centuries back, have spoken about it, that who am I? So I think it's very important in the world that we are in today that we have to identify that what are the bigger challenges. The more and more technology we are going to use, more and more, we don't want to become zombies. We want to be the end users of the technology rather than, being part of it, right? So I think while there's going to be a man-machine system or man AI and HI. End of the day, it has to be for the welfare of the nation, welfare of the worldwide. And typically, if you look at, you will find that the biggest sufferers are the youth across the world, because they are seeing the tremendous changes that we have not seen in centuries, including the big COVID-19. Although it acted as a facilitator for many adaptation, but I feel that there is a lot that individuals can do. Now, here is this picture that I am showing. He is Govan Brown, former New York bus driver. So we may think that what is he doing there in this presentation? Well, I know, when he used to drive a bus, the entire, you can imagine a New York city ride in a bus, people with mixed emotions are boarding the bus. But he would make polite conversations with individuals and would pep up every individual. So he became so popular that in his own capacity, when he was retiring after 20 years, he retires after spreading cheer as a bus driver retires. And he was covered in the New York Times. It is something, what it really talks about is, as educators, today, in this very changed world, we all need to be like Govan, and we need to create an impact in the lives of the masses, specifically to do with the young people who are in this chaotic world. I think a lot is changing. So I think this is something we really need to think about. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pass on these pages, and I don't think the hall is full, so we can just, each one of you, there are some responses that I would request from you, and I'll ask them also so that we won't utilize the time properly. Can you just pass it on? So I'm going to ask a question to you before you start filling up this form. My first question to you is, on a scale of 1 to 10, how do you feel today? On a scale of 1 to 10, how do you feel today? Right? You don't need to announce it, you just note it down. Most of us, we are really pushing our emotions away. So we are not acknowledging our experiences, we do not acknowledge how we feel. So on a point scale of 1 to 10, what do you feel? So if you look at the basic abstract, we have talked about this whole, the educators, the kind of changes that we're going to see in the next 10 years, whether it is this, what we talked about, the trans-country exercise of collaboration, or the way education itself is going to be. Because with this whole AI revolution, I think many of the things what you're doing have to change. So I call it like a bullet train effect. What is that bullet train effect? When bullet train was, invented, if you look at the history in Japan, so the whole idea was how it can cut down the distance that people travel by time. So you get less time to travel. So how was the train need to be built? So many things had to be changed. So including the shape of the train, including the way the tracks is going to be. So I think if we want a big change in the system, it has to be radical. So when we look at the implementation of any kind of technology or any change that we're seeing in the education world today, we really need to look at, we have to really adopt the bullet train habit in terms of understanding the big impact that it can create within the system. If you make incremental impacts, nothing big is going to happen. So what happens is, at least in our own game plan, it has to be large and impactful. So when we are talking about creating a zero carbon net, where we have less carbon footprints, all of that is going to be possible when it is impactful by making individuals responsible. So there needs to be advocacy, there needs to be policies, there needs to be adoption. So I think that is something that we are looking at. So the first question I've asked you, as a resilient educator who has the grit and the perseverance to look at the change the way it is, how do you rate yourself in 1 to 5? You can put a marks. I'm not asking you. There's nothing right or wrong, but you know yourself very well that how well are you able to handle the change that you're facing. That's the first one. If anybody wants to share, you can please raise your hands and let us know. On the scale of 1 to 5, rate yourself as a resilient educator. And what is a resilient educator? If there is a change happening in the system, you're able to quickly adopt it. Or you have the patience to handle when you have to train your people in your own team. So that shows a lot of resilience, right? Anybody wants to say? Yeah?
Yeah, I mentioned that every blow of a change, makes me more determined.
Okay, very good. So you scale out of 1 to 5, where would you put yourself?
4.
Excellent. How many in 4s? Okay, great. Anybody in 1 and 2? There's nothing wrong in it. Sometimes it takes time to change. Now, you've already mentioned, can anybody tell me anything about your experience when a change was happening in your educational setup or system? Illustrate briefly. You mentioned that I become determined. Can we see that what led you to that determination, Shobha?
Not exactly in the education system, but I can give you an example where in the industry when I was working as a practitioner within the training, and where I handled a lot of, that was when digital transformation was happening in the financial sector. The first project that we got into, at that time everything was very new, fintech was quite new, everything was quite new. So a lot of traditional companies were getting into, digitalization. That was the time when we had a severe blow, or a lot of changes. Especially, the very much important was like our own team doesn't cooperate; they resist without knowing the depth. Despite of so much of explanation, everything, they don't want to register because they are not sure about the outcome, whether it will be in their favor or not. So that was one of the blows that we had in change management. Making the people to understand that this change is going to be in their favor is a very big thing.
Right. Great. I think that's a great answer. I'd like to do one thing now that, we are so used to the way we are all sitting in the room, and I'm going to the next question, which is on emotion. So I want to do a very small 30 seconds exercise. I want you to turn around to the person sitting next to you and shake hands. I'm very happy to meet you. Please do that. It was wonderful.
Very good.
Now, my third question that I'm asking that, how do you leverage your attitude and emotions to, regulate yourself or lead yourself or help yourself or become a leader or a team player? How are you using it? To do that, I thought I'll quickly deal with what these things are. Like when I talk about optimism, of course, it's a positive mindset that we're looking at, but they are also realists. They are not like a die-hard optimist and you don't look at the reality. So the ability is in one of the books I had already mentioned that it is the seventh sense, which is a kind of a superpower, your attitude and intelligence. We all born with IQ, right? Very minimal changes happen after a certain age. But two things that really you can improve is your emotional, the way you behave emotionally, and the way your attitude functions. So these two, OQ and EQ, can do wonders in your life. So that is one thing that I wanted to leave you with. When optimism and positive mindset, mental predisposition propel an innate possibility within, it gets transformed, it helps an individual, it's a propeller. It can accelerate your behavior. So what happens is your attitudinal intelligence, it works like an attitudinal intelligence. So some of these, because of positive time, I won't get into many of them, but to leave you with that many of the harbingers of optimism have been very top leaders across the world. Some of them have, even I look at an innovator like a Steve Jobs, who from a Macintosh created an entire Apple and whatever we see today, or be it Gautam Buddha, who still changed the world by his philosophy, or we have seen the Greek philosophers. Similarly, if you look at the Tagore, who is one of the first Nobel laureates in India, the philosopher, or the Swami Vivekananda, who took a lot of these Eastern philosophies to the entire world, or Mother Teresa, or Mahatma Gandhi, or if you look at in spite of being physically incapacitated, Stephen William Hawkins, he was an inspirer. So keeping that in mind, I want to take you to the next big topic, which is the optimism on one hand is your attitude, how you do things, and the other hand is emotional intelligence. I think this whole concept of emotional intelligence was first, brought by Peter Salovey and John Mayer, and very recently I think he retired as a president, but of one of the universities. But the concept was made more popular by none other than but Daniel Goleman. Yeah, thank you for that. So Daniel Goleman popularized it, and Daniel Goleman was, of course, a psychologist, but he was writing for New York Times. But over a period, he got an article where it talked about emotional intelligence, and that was the beginning of writing the book. So when I have to make it simply understood by all of you, I must tell you this is how it works, right? This is how it works. So basically, in the emotional intelligence, you have four domains, right? One is your self-awareness, the self-management. So basically, are we aware of our emotions? Like I asked you, on a scale of 1 to 10, what are you feeling? So whether you're feeling angry or sad or whatever, or very happy or elated, are we acknowledging those emotions? That's one thing that is happening today, that we are in a chaos, we are constantly overruled by our other things like the social media, the tech platforms, the fast pace of life, the geopolitical crisis. We stop living for ourselves or kind of regulating ourselves. And that leads to better self-management. If you're more self-aware, if you're aware of yourself, you're better managers. So what it does is you have more emotional self-control. So how does that being utilized? When you're working in a team. If you're better self-management, you're a better self-manager, you're able to lead a better team. You're able to communicate better. You're able to collaborate. So basically, this is the self part of it, the self-awareness and self-management. Then comes the empathy, and organizational awareness comes through social awareness, and that's basically very popularly today we talk about it as a social intelligence. Once you are socially aware in the organization, empathy is part of it, because as a leader, if you look at success today, everybody who doesn't want to become a leader. If you look at any of the young person, if you ask them, they all want to be the leader. So one of the very important aspects within this whole emotional intelligence is the social awareness part and the relationship management. And this becomes an enabler to manage large teams, to coach, to mentor, to manage the teamwork, in case of crisis. So what is happening? I'll give you an example that I'm currently doing. I got an opportunity where the Indian Navy, they have a center and they're working on developing emotionally intelligent warriors. So in that, we are working with them to help their own naval officers to become more emotionally intelligent. thus they are better team players, they are better to deal with the stressors in life, they are better to handle the problems that they have, and they are able to definitely then have less of burnout that is happening. So I think this is a very interesting way. So in your own lives, in your own domain that we all are today, we have to be looking at this aspect of life. So if you look at the brain design emerges as a key to emotion. So what happens is whatever we feel, our cognition is based, our thinking, our higher order mental processes is based on how we feel. So it's very important to first identify and then manage it. So one is you identify and then you manage it. So reactions can occur before thoughts are processed. So we are at a fast pace, we want to react to things because we are not controlling our emotions, because we are unaware of our actual emotions that we feel. Now I want to take you to another very interesting thing. Why is the need for emotional intelligence in your organizations or in your own setup? How many of us have heard of the ripple effect? Anybody? What is the ripple effect? Just a dictionary meaning of ripple effect?
Series of effect.
Yeah, it impacts. So it's like a ripple, water ripple, it passes on. So what happens is, if the boss enters is in a grumpy mood, is showing this arrogance or displeasure, it actually bogs down the team. So if you look at any particular team, if you want the team to function, think of the startups, think of big companies, all the innovation-led companies, they are all working on this. We need to really impact by improving the ripple effects, emotional cognition, and influence on group behavior. So I think a lot depends on how you feel. It could be with your family, it could be with your own children, it could be with your people in the community. It is extremely critical that we identify that. So the next question is, how have you demonstrated flexibility and adaptability to any changes in educational paradigm? So this time I want to open it for 1 minute. Anybody, please share that how have you demonstrated flexibility and adaptability to this new environment? Be it any tools that you have used for AI or anything, including cloud computing like we had that presentation. So what are how have you demonstrated that adaptability behavior? Anyone? Yes? Apart from Shobha, is there anyone else? Of course, I'll come to you. I would really want to see that we are more participative in this. So yeah, yes, please.
Again, largely triggered by COVID, but having online proctored assessments, so you can marry authenticity of academic achievement with completion of assessment.
Great, that's a lovely answer. Yes, of course, many of us have done that. Any other thought?
Well, as I told you that I'm working with indigenous people, the Cree nations in north of Canada. So one of the challenges that I have started with the adult people, I teach adult education, and most of them do not talk. There is no way. They are coming and sitting, even they say hello, they would not, most of the time. So this was a challenging part. So I had to adapt myself. So I invited them sometimes. I even cook something for them. The Indian food, for example, I did it. So adaptability, it was, I had to understand that challenge. Where is it? And step by step, I was able to get connected with them. And I think this is almost like emotional intelligence I applied to go there on their shows, to understand their challenge. And I was able to get connected. I'm doing much better now.
Excellent. Shobha?
Flexibility. When I'm teaching in the class, most of the time at the end of the session, I do throw up some of the reflective questions with my students. And once the reflective session is over, like few of them answers, so I do open up a chat GPT, and I said let's see what chat GPT answers, what it thinks. So that helps us a lot in the classroom discussion, what chat GPT can do, what human mind can do, and we have a good discussion and very positive discussion over there. These sort of a flexibility and adaptability, what I can see that my students now are not dependent upon ChatGPT because they think that their mind can do more original work than that of that.
Right. Very good. Okay, anyone else? Perfect. So we are now looking at the other aspect, which is going to be very important. I think one of the things that we've talked about is diversity, managing the cultural differences with there. Thanks to the overall technology platform, it's also an enabler. It's also a level playing ground now. It is also creating less of problems on diversity or whatever age or gender or color or whichever way, but still there is a lot that needs to be achieved. Now, the last question that I put in this questionnaire is about what barriers do you face in adapting any new technology or that you want to bring in, apart from the policy level barriers? Like, your university or your institution has certain norms or rules. So what kind of barriers have you faced when you are adopting a new set of ways, or it could be a pedagogy, it could be anything else. Anything that you would like to share? Any of you? Yeah?
Getting students to participate in chat rooms.
Okay.
So as part of the dialogue, we try and get them to engage with discussion topics, but getting the students going to engage with it is difficult. Once they get into the routine, it's fine. But I suppose similarly to, reflecting your experiences, getting them to go contribute to the first time is always a challenge.
Amazing. Yeah, that's very true. And I've seen that because one of the reason is also because somewhere they are also now today having a huge problem. So at least I can talk about India and some of the other partnering institutions. It has been, we have seen that they're all going through a lot of mental health challenges, which includes, the common mental health disorders. So they're above the threshold, which means they're not suffering in terms of any illnesses, but they are having a lot of problems because of this old technology chaos. So there is a less and less of connect, like what Dr. Chaudhary mentioned. Yes, it is happening. So, but I agree to that how do you bring people to participate is a very big issue. I think we really need to work on. So keeping this in mind, that what kind of a leader you would want to be. Obviously, a leader you love, right? So who is a leader you love? A leader you love is a person who is more emotionally intelligent, is more, their attitude is positive. So primarily it can be learned. The biggest thing about OQ and EQ is while IQ cannot be developed, but at any age and any stage in life, we can undergo training for improving your own emotional competencies, your attitudinal competencies. So if we do a self-reflection, we very clearly know where we have a loss, where there is a problem, and how we can emerge as better players in the industry. So in these, of course, two books, that one is OQ, which was published, and it is historical because one time it also got Dr. Datta's team. It was released at one of the conferences even here. This was published by Sage, The Power of Positivity, Optimism and the Seventh Sense. And of course, a lot of inspiration and collaboration with EQ, which is of course the Daniel Goleman Emotional Intelligence. I would really suggest that each one of you, if you get opportunity, please go through Daniel Goleman's book, which is very important. While a lot of things have changed, but the concepts remain. And like we started in the morning talking about the philosophers, many of those things spoken by them is the truth today. I think we really need to adopt that as educators. So be it any new technology, be it the problems that we are going to face, because there's so much of deep fake happening. How are we going to handle it? So one of the things that became very popular is every time you're happy, you win. So I do suggest that keep that happiness around you. So whatever you do, whatever new technology you're working on, whatever problems or challenges you want to define, but till your mental health in terms of your overall perspective to life doesn't change, it becomes very difficult to win the game. So it's very important that if you look at any game, particular game, the mindset really matters. So with these words, I rest here, but at the same time, I would like to have some remarks from you or any questions from you, so that will be very useful.